All right, so this is section 11.1. It's the beginning of what we would call the study of statistics. In statistics, there are going to be 5 values that we're going to refer to in 11.1 that have meaning to us. The first one we want to talk about is what's called the mean. Now, most of you think of this probably as the average, which is to add up all of the terms and divide it by the number of terms. We're going to refer to that as x bar, or the mean today. That's the symbol we use for mean. The second term is called the median, which is the middle number in the data set, but the data set has to be ordered from least to greatest. If by chance you end up with an even number of numbers, you come towards the center, you'll end up stuck with 2 values. If that's the case, you just average the 2 middle numbers and use that as your median. Sometimes that means you're going to use a value that's not part of your data set for your median, and that is okay. Your mode is the most common number in the set of numbers. You could have 1 because it's one number that shows up more than any other. You could have 0 because they all show up exactly the same amount of times. Or you could have no mode at all. So that would be no mode. Or you could have a multiple set of modes, which would be 2 or 3 values out of, say, 5 show up multiple times. And so there are some values that don't show up as many times as the other guys, and those guys that hit the peak show up, say each of them show up 3 times. If there's 2 or 3 values that show up 3 times each, then we're going to say that there's more than one mode. The second thing we're going to talk about is what's called measures of dispersion. So central tendency tells us what's going on towards the center of the data. Now this is going to tell us how far spread out the data is, and maybe give us an indication of whether or not the data has a pattern, or whether it's just a spread of random numbers. And so the first one is the range. The range is the greatest value minus the least value. So big minus little. That'll give you the range of the values. And then we want to be able to also calculate the standard deviation. We use this funny looking symbol. I think of it kind of like a 9 that fell over. Or you say a B that fell the other way. A golf club head. There's lots of things you can make that look like. But it's called sigma. And its formula is x1 minus x bar, the average or mean quantity squared, plus the next term minus the average squared, plus so on and so on until I get to the last term. I'll divide that by n, and then I'll take the square root. All of these can be affected by outliers, which are values in the data set that are much greater or much less than all the other values. So if I have the numbers 2, 3, 4, and then the next entry is 100, that 100 is very, very far from 2, 3, and 4, so I might consider it an outlier. And there are times we would want to throw that value out of the data set. Let's look at a couple examples, and I will be using the graphing calculator at times to help speed the process along, but I'll also give you examples of how you could do it without the graphing calculator. So here on number 6, we're being asked to find the mean, the median, and the mode. Okay, those are the 3 things I'm being asked to find. Well, the first thing I notice is these are not in numerical order. So I want to put them in numerical order. And so I'm looking for the smallest value. That should be 15. So 15 goes first. Then I'm looking through my list again. I see there's 2 19s. So I'll put 19, 19. And then I look through my list. I see a 22. I see a 24, then a 25, then a 26. So 24, 25, 26. Then I see a 30, a 35, a 39, and a 42. Alright, so now that they're in order, let's go ahead and find the median and the mode. As far as the median is concerned, the way I do that is I kind of come from each direction 1 unit at a time, just cruising along, getting closer to the center, checking 1 off on each side, and here 25 would be my median, because it's the central value. Then when I want to do the mode, I'm looking for duplication. The only duplication I see is here with the 19s. So 19 must be my mode. And then finally, I want to evaluate the mean. Now the mean is when I add all of these up and divide by the number of entries. If I counted correctly, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 entries. So I'm going to grab my calculator. Okay, put it right here. And I'm going to clear the screen and start adding. 15 plus 19 plus 19 plus 22 plus 24 plus 25 plus 26 plus 30 plus 39 plus 42. Gives me 261, and I'll divide that by 11 to get 23.7. Now it's important to realize that we're going to use, oh, looks like I made a mistake somewhere. Let's look at those values again. We had 25, we had 19. I wonder if I typed one of them in wrong. 24, 25, 26, 30. I missed 35. So let's start that over. Again, you got to get things right. So 15 plus 19 plus 19 plus 22 plus 24 plus 25 plus 26 plus 30 plus 35 plus 39 plus 42. Gives me a little bit bigger value. Now if I divide that by 11, gives me 26.9, which is the correct answer. And so I'll come here, put 26.9. Again, we're going to use one decimal place for our values today, for our statistics. And that's how I find my mean, median, and mode. As I go on to number 11, it's asking me to first find the range and then to find the standard deviation. Well, the range is, let's see, the lowest value seems to be 4 and the biggest value seems to be 9. So the gap between 9 and 4 is 5. To find the standard deviation, it's that square root. And well, to do it, I'm going to need first to find x bar, the mean or the average. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is grab my calculator and calculate the average of these values. So 7 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus 9 plus 5. Oops, I missed one. 6, 8, 5 plus 9 plus 5 plus 7. And I will divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entries to get 6.375. So I get 6.375. To get the standard deviation, this takes quite the square root. Remember, it's got the x value, so x1, which would be 7. I'd minus the average, which is 6.375, square it, and add the next, and add the next, and always squaring these parentheses. This is going to take a while to write out, so I'm just going to go straight to the calculator and try to type this in. I'm not going to put the square root in, and I'm also not going to put in the divided by n part yet. I'm just going to do the calculation where I add all the values up. So I'm going to start with parentheses, okay, and then I'm going to have 7 minus 6.375 squared. It's going to take a little bit. Oops, back up. Parentheses squared plus parentheses. I've got 4 minus 6.375 parentheses squared minus parentheses 6 minus 6.375 parentheses squared plus, oh, I missed a plus up there. This is going to be a while, isn't it? Well, let me show you a shortcut. Okay, I'm going to clear all that out. What I'm actually going to do is use some statistics skills that are on here. Now, I could use that formula, and it will work every time. But I'm going to go straight to editing a list. I'm going to clear this list out. Clear the list 1. Okay. Now I'm going to put these values in. 7, then 4, then 6, then 8, 5, 9, 5, and 7. Notice it says I'm on line 9 now, which means there must be 8 entries in the list. So I'm going to go to statistic. I actually want to do what's called one variable statistics. I'm going to calculate this. It's going to assume that I'm using list 1. Hey, there's that average that I said I'd created. But I come down here to the very bottom of the list, and there's the standard deviation, 1.6. So in this case, sigma equals 1.6. My range was 5, and I'm done. This calculator approach is going to save me a lot of time. So let's look at this set of data. And this involves what's called an outlier. Notice that 0 is significantly smaller than the rest of these. So we're going to use with the outlier and then without the outlier, because that's going to skew the data. We don't necessarily want it there, but we're not sure whether or not it's going to make a big difference. So we need to find x bar, we need to find the median, we need to find the mode, we need to find the range, and we need to find the standard deviation. Okay? And so those are the things that we want to find. Whoops. Oh, come on. Whoops. Not what I wanted. Okay. There we go. That's what I want. So I'm going to do it with and I'm going to do it without. Well, I'm going to use my calculator for both of these. Actually, first thing I'll do is I'll go in and calculate the ones that are a little bit easier. These look like they're already in order. Okay. So if I'm going to calculate the, say, the median, if I come inward, there's 1 and 1, and 2 and 2, 3, 3, and now I'm in the middle of these two, right? So I need to take the average of 75 and 83, or the midpoint of 75 and 83. And that's going to be 79. And so my median is 79. My mode, it looks like 83 shows up the most times, so I'll say that it's 83. And the range, 91 minus 0 is a range of 91. Let's use the calculator and find out how good or bad this data is from its standard deviation. So I'm going to go to my list, which is in the stat. I'm going to edit my list. I'm going to start overtyping 0, 72, 75, 75, 83, 83, 83, 91. Okay, and if there was still an entry here, I could just start deleting those other entries. So now I'm going to go to stat. I'm going to run a calculation of the first variable, one variable statistics. And here's what I come up with. 70.25 is the average, mean, and 27.2. So 70.25 or 70.3. And this down here was 20, oops, wrong thing, 27.2. That is a huge standard deviation. And notice that the average is lower than almost all of the values. That's how much this 0 changed things. Well, now we want to do it without the outlier. So if I get rid of that, now my median is just plain 83, which is a little bit higher. My mode is again 83. My range goes from 91 down to 72, which would be 19. Now I need to calculate those other two values. I'll use my calculator, and what I'll do is go to my list, I'll edit my list, and I'm going to delete that first entry. And so it's gotten rid of the 0. Now when I run the stat, one variable statistics, I'm going to get an average of 80.3, which moved it up a whole 10 points. That's a big change. And notice, it's right in the middle of this list of data. Then I also want to get the standard deviation, which is down to 6.1 now. Significant difference in these two values. Now that 91, is that an outlier? Without the 0 there, we might consider it an outlier because it's a full 8 points higher than the next nearest value. And if I did that, this would hone in even more. Now maybe that 91 is a valid answer. We don't want to get too eager to cut information out, but a standard deviation of 6.1 is not horrible. It's okay, but we would like to see that get a little bit lower if we could. That is your homework. Again, the statistics on the calculator is really useful. Otherwise, we sort of have to do things by hand. The formulas are in the text. You certainly can. Just have to be very cautious about how you get them in the calculator. Good luck, and we'll see you in class.